Rate of high school graduation, much higher for Black West Indians. Rate of enrollment in college, much higher. Rate of professional occupations.
And this is what a lot of people say.
There's a bigger picture way to test the systemic racism hypothesis, which is to take two populations where it's a very messy, crude science experiment, but to take two populations where you're holding systemic racism constant, namely Black Americans like myself and Black immigrants, especially Black immigrants from the West Indies and their children. So we're talking about immigrants from Jamaica, Barbados, other places in the West Indies, and specifically their children. They're American-born children. So these are people you could not tell apart from Black, like you couldn't tell if I didn't tell you that I wasn't the child of a Jamaican immigrant or something, right? And you find the thing about these is that these two populations differ in many ways. Some ways are very hard to quantify, but they differ culturally. They differ for all kinds of reasons, partially because the kind of immigrant who gets out of a Jamaica differs systematically. Is going to be disproportionately intelligent, disproportionately hardworking. Whatever the traits are that get you from Jamaica to New York, say, that's a cluster of attributes that makes that population differ. But there's one thing that is not different, which is they are subjected to whatever level of systemic racism exists.
That's extremely true. When you talk about systemic racism or racism specifically, you're without a doubt 100% referring to the color of someone's skin, because that's what race is. Race is how you look and certain qualities associated with the level of melanin within your skin. However, when you talk about systemic racism, that means there's racism in America. He's talking about America. So there's racism at a systemic level in your land, specifically America in this instance. However, this could be a good argument if it wasn't for one thing, and he's going to break it down, and I'm just giving my objective analysis on it. It would be a good argument except for one thing, and that's people of the same race, meaning same skin color, same attributes physically, but they're living vastly different lives in terms of education and in terms of happiness, in terms of culture. They're living vastly different lives in terms of economics. They're living vastly different lives in terms of all these things that are not directly related to race. So is systemic racism still existed? Does it still exist? Although people of the same race with different cultures, however, are living vastly different lives? Let's see.
So Thomas Sowell has done good work on, back in the 70s, he showed that second generation West Indians living in the same city as Black Americans were earning 58% more, right? So they're both being treated to whatever degree badly by white people. Whatever system you want to suppose is holding Black people back is equally affecting both of them. The Columbia sociologist Van Tran has a great essay in which this difference is brought out. You find neighborhoods of Black Americans right next to neighborhoods of Black West Indians in New York. They're equally segregated from white people, so it gets rid of the idea that being segregated by itself or living around people who only look like you is inherently a disadvantage. It gets around the policing issue because these populations are being the police can't tell the difference between a second generation West Indian and a Black person. It gets around whatever level of systemic racism is or isn't in the pipeline with regard to schools. And you find wildly different outcomes. You find, rate of high school graduation much higher for Black West Indians. Rate of enrollment in college much higher. Rate of professional occupations much higher. Crime lower, right? So,
and this is what a lot of people say, and I feel like the message gets mixed up within society. On one hand, you have, and let's preface this by saying, we all know that racism exists. We all know it exists. You can't guarantee it exists on a systemic level, but individual racism 1000% exists for people. If it didn't, let's be honest, it exists. However, When you're saying that it disproportionately affects the outcomes of black people, meaning that black people cannot win in a country because of racism, that's when you have problems. And it's a big problem because the stance is black people are being disproportionately affected by racism, and it's due to white people. And because of this, black people are not allowed to win in society. And that's when people get a problem because they're saying people who look just like you, same race, are definitely doing way better than you. And when they say this, it's true. It's not their personal opinion. It's what's actually happening in society. They are graduating at higher rates than you. They have higher reading levels than you. They make more than you. They're more educated than you. They're happier than you. They have bigger families than you, higher marriage rates than you. This is what the problem is. But then you have a group of people who just refuse to listen to any of that stuff and say, nah, it's because of white people. And that's where things get bad.
This suggests to me that there are that the role of systemic racism, to whatever degree it exists, is minimal at this point. And there's a whole narrative built around the idea that this is the primary obstacle facing black people. And it's worth noting, I don't think most black people actually believe this, because I mean there are various polls to cite here, but there's one from Pew that asked black people without college educations, has your race held you back at all in life? 60% said no. It's a recent Pew poll. Another Gallup poll asked, is bias the main issue facing you in jobs and housing? 60% again said no. The Harvard sociologist Ethan Foss has done extensive polling of the black community and found that disconnected black youth, which are black youth who aren't in schools and don't have jobs, the people on the lowest rung of society, something around 30% of them think the system is rigged and 70% don't. So what we're getting is the voices of black people who believe the systemic racism narrative promoted to the most powerful media positions in our country. So we're getting the impression that this is a uniform view, and it's not.
Right.
Yeah, it's not, bro. At this point, you should know that you can achieve anything in this country. And if you don't think you can, I don't really know what to tell you. The fact that people are still pigeonholing race as a way to say, I can't win in life because white people are holding me down. It's just pure delusion, bro. It's just pure delusion. White people don't wake up every day and say, how can I oppress a black person? I am okay. Maybe some super racist places they may think that, but I promise 99.9999999% of white people do not think that.
So this is sort of the Jesse Jacksons, Al Sharptons. Yeah. They get moved up because they're given sort of simple answers.
Right.
So I guess it harkens the question, then I could ask this either way. What is it that the West Indian immigrants are doing right, or what is it that the other folks are doing wrong?
Yeah.
You can answer that in either direction you want to go first.
Well, part of it is just immigration selection factors that I mentioned, right? So the kind of Jamaican or Barbadian who makes it off the island to New York is likely to be disproportionately hardworking, disproportionately X for whatever X factor is. And so in that sense, the direct comparison can be misleading, but just analyzing why these two populations differ, you find West Indian immigrants more likely to come from a two-parent home, more likely to have had a more classically socially conservative upbringing, which is, you don't talk back to your parents. Parents are rather strict. There are downsides, of course, to that style of parenting, but basically what I'm saying is that there are cultural factors that are important that differ between these two groups, right? You find there are many.
He's trying to be extremely nice and correct and politically correct when he says this. It's because they work harder. Their parents, I would say, emphasize hard work and emphasize a certain level of respect more. It's because I'm assuming they value education way more. That's literally it. All this goes in the culture. He didn't mention race. He didn't mention gender. He didn't mention anything you can't control. It's hard work and discipline. Really.
I mean, this is where the conversation for many people gets especially uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? It's the idea that every culture, every subculture is identical in the behavioral patterns that are inculcated, and wherever there is a disparity in some outcome, it's not possible that culture accounts for some or most of that disparity, which I think is a very silly idea.
Well, it's completely nonsensical.
Yeah, yes.
Cultures are different. Different people and different groups put different emphasis on certain things. Some put more on family, some put more on education, some put more on sports or whatever the hell it is. So when you hear Larry Elder make the argument, something around until 1972, the black family had a higher rate of staying in marriages, and then he lays out the reasons that he believes policies of the Democrats destroyed all that. That obviously resonates with you, right? Because you're giving me some piece of this. Both answers, I think, resonate or went back to family rates of marriage and some sort of conservative ideals.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a very complex.
People
question.
hate when anyone talks about this, about family. People
Yes.
just absolutely hate it.
It is a fact that the rate of two-parent homes and marriages was pretty similar to the white rate until the 60s. It's a matter of scholarly dispute as to what was the cause. I think it's certain at this point there was no one cause. Welfare state may have had something to do with it, but I think it may have just been changing norms in the culture, because we're seeing the same thing happen in the white working class as well now, with the decline of two-parent homes to a lesser extent than has happened in the.
Yeah, culture plays a large impact on economic success, or not even removing economics. Because when I say economics, I'm not saying, oh, you're going to be rich. I'm just saying you're not super, 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 super impoverished to the point where you have to do illegal activities to make money. That's what I'm referring to. But yeah, this is obviously very smart young man. This is a good discussion. But if you have any more suggestions for me, comment down below. I'll see you on the next one.